Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 176 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am your host, Neelan, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, the green tank, Mark, the red tank, Kellen, and the blue tank, Christina. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hello, Neelan.
Hello.
How is everyone doing on this fine day?
Tuesday.
Fantastic.
It is a Tuesday. It is later in the week than usual for a record, which is great.
It's just slowly gotten later and later. It used to be Sunday
Yeah.
every week, and then it used to be Monday every week, and now it's creeping into Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Before we know it, we'll be doing it like the hours before the episode posts, which is going to be fun for everyone. This week on the show, looking ahead, we're going to be answering some questions, some of which involve something to do with black licorice and some easy breezy summer games. But before we get there, we're going to be covering the games that we've been playing this week. And this week on the show, Mark is going to be talking about Trekking the World. I'm going to be talking about Inkling. Christina's going to give us a shocking update on My City. And Kellen's going to be telling us about Ruination. So let's kick it off.
Ruination.
What's that?
We just say Ruination.
Ruination? Oh, yeah, we don't pronounce the second vowel. That's right, the second syllable. Mark, kick us off with Trekking the World.
I did a little bit of trekking the world myself as I visited some friends and family in Las Vegas this weekend. And while I was there,
One
I don't know if
day
Vegas
over.
counts as the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is a very American view of the world, Mark.
well, I was trekking and I was traversing the continent.
I was going to say, Mark, they aren't your friends. You're just giving them money.
Anyhow, this is the same family
You're
that
giving your family money?
What? I don't even know where the money thing came from. Kellen said something
Is that
about money.
legal in Vegas?
What? Giving family
What?
money?
Giving people money.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we talking about prostitution now? Is that what's going on?
Yes.
Okay, just to be clear. Great. All right,
It's a very expensive way to play a board game, Mark.
that's true. That's true. That's a good point.
Oh, I get it. You had to visit family. Nobody wanted to play games with you.
Exactly.
So you had to hire someone.
Thankfully, you know,
There's a plethora of willing participants.
yeah, you can buy anything in Vegas, including board gaming friends. So after I paid for, oh my God, what am I going to say? I don't know. Never mind. Jesus, I can't think of it. Services rendered.
Do not cut that out. Do not cut that out.
All right. So the friends I visited were the same family that I introduced.
Wait.
Okay.
You got to get your story straight, Mark. First, you visited friends, then you visited prostitutes and family. What's the deal?
I was there for 3 days. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One day each.
Yeah, 1 day each.
I thought you were more of just a boom kind of guy.
I might have commingled some of the visits.
The triple boom surprised me.
The triple boom surprised you? I exude triple boom. Anyhow.
We are getting older.
Okay, here we go.
As you were saying, after you paid,
Yeah, after
Go
I
on.
paid
And the boom, boom, boom.
for the triple boom, I sat down with friends I had taught Ticket to Ride to about a year and a half ago. They had very little board game experience. They're not very gamers, but were interested in playing Ticket to Ride. And I'm always concerned, even with like lightweight games, where non-gamers' threshold for rules is going to be. I'm always concerned that, I'm just going to start explaining drawing cards and placing trains and all this stuff. And even though it's a lightweight game, I'm always a little cognizant of, is this too much? Is this going to be something that gets boring or gets too much? But I was very pleasantly surprised in teaching them Ticket to Ride. They jumped all over it. They bought more maps after I left. So when I visited this last weekend, they had picked up a copy of Trekking the World, which is a follow-up to Trekking the National Parks, which I actually had played. I had not played Trekking the World, but Trekking the National Parks I had played and actually moved on from because it's a little on the light side, but I enjoyed and was looking forward to giving this sequel a shot because I know it's fairly new and fairly popular. So Trekking the World does share a lot of DNA with Ticket to Ride. You are trying to... Christina, laugh. Just...
sorry.
Okay, it's okay. It's all right.
It's my fault because
No,
I texted Kellen to make another prostitute chat.
Okay.
So, okay,
All
Mark,
right.
sorry. After you were done sharing your DNA,
Yes. Right.
what happened next?
Okay.
He did
So-
say he made a train at one point, which I thought was going to be my chance.
All right. Well, feel free
Yeah.
to hop in.
Why didn't you take your chance? There were a few too. There was one where he said, I can't remember, but there was a good. It was like, oh yeah, because you were saying you were worried that there's going to be too much rules overhead, and I was like picturing you teaching a prostitute, and she's like getting bored listening to you tell the rules, and she just like starts taking off her clothes because she's bored.
It's what they do, Mark. They just strip.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's see where this goes. So, Trekking the World does share a lot of DNA with Ticket to Ride. What you're doing is you're traveling across a map. You are spending cards to do so, and you are doing a lot of set collection. Basically, set collection is the name of the game with Trekking the World. You look so. You're trying to keep yourself so calm. Okay.
Take deep breaths.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So, set collection is the name of the game in Trekking the World. You're spending cards to move your pawn around the map, picking up cubes of various colors if you land on a spot for set collection at the end of the game. You can also spend those cards, instead of using them for their point value, for movement, you can use them for their color, to go to a park and turn in the correct set of colors to pick up a card representing the park. So, for example, if one of the parks on the display is Yellowstone and it requires a green and yellow card, instead of using those green and yellow cards for the numerical value in order to get to Yellowstone, if you're already at Yellowstone, you can cash in those cards, get the card representing the national park, and it'll have a number of points on it, and you're trying to gather as many points from visiting these parks, turning in the cards, as well as this set collection with the cubes that you pick up around the board.
What if you played this game, but you added in the mechanic of actually visiting every park? So you only got the points when you actually visited.
It'd be a long game.
But it would be fun.
It'd be great. It'd be fantastic. I can't think of a better gaming experience, but...
Well, maybe we should make that game.
All right. Sounds good. Let's do it. Your first card is, let me see here, the Kremlin, Christina. So
Oh, boy.
that's where your first points are. So to go back to my concern that I had about the complexity of the game, they took to Trekking the World beautifully, had no problems with it. Although it does have a lot of things going on. You have these multi-use cards, you have this set collection element and traveling the board, and there's also these powers you can activate. Every game, there are 2 unique powers that you can activate by spending cards on. So there's a lot of ways to take actions, but it wasn't so complicated for them that it was an issue, and they really, really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it as well. It's not a game that I would break out at a game night, but if I had, non-gaming friends over or some family gathering or something like that, this is exactly the right weight. And, the theme of traveling the world and the fact that all the cards have unique art representing these national parks, makes for a lovely display and a very, nice board presence as well. It's very colorful. Really enjoyed my time with Trekking the World. Oh, and as I was saying, I don't know if I ever got to it, but if you've played Trekking the National Parks, there's a lot of the same mechanisms that carry over from one game to the next. There's a couple variations, but for the most part, it's quite similar.
Yeah, I was just looking down the sheet of card art for this, and it really is quite pretty, which feels like a pretty big quality upgrade over Trekking the National Parks, which kind of just looks a little bit drab by comparison.
Yeah, I agree that it's definitely an upgrade, although Trekking the World replaces the stones that came in Trekking the National Parks with cubes. So that's a little bit of a downgrade, but otherwise it is certainly a step up. And I would say if you have family or friends that are slowly getting into board games or are interested in, introductory level board games and they're sort of tired of Ticket to Ride, the Trekking series seems like a pretty nice fit.
And so, Mark, I guess Ticket to Ride gets maligned, I think, in the community a little bit more than it deserves. But it really is like a best-in-class game that works for non-gamers and it works for hardcore gamers because there is that strategy there. What did these new quote-unquote friends of yours say about the feeling of the game that was different? Because they've got multiple versions of Ticket to Ride, like a master class in this weight. What did they get out of this beyond it looked so much cooler?
Well, first I'll correct you, highly paid friends. But I think Ticket to Ride has sort of teeth when it comes to track placement. You can cut people off. This has, and I think this is the sort of thing that generally interests, in my experience, non-gamers or people who are new to the hobby, or maybe it's the way I teach the game because I'm so excited about these aspects, the points where the conflict happens. So in trekking the world, when you're trying to travel around the world, if there is another player's pawn in your path, you cannot pass through it, which leads to some opportunities to just block somebody, just to like stand in front of somebody to make them take the long way around and spend more cards. They sort of found that interesting. And also the set collection aspect when it comes to picking up cubes around the board. They come in 4 different colors, and there's the thing where if you have the most cubes, you get a card saying, you're leading in, say, white cubes, and you don't give up that card unless somebody else beats you to it. So there's that sort of like, hey, I'm winning in red. This person is tied with me. They can surpass me if they take the next red. Do I want to focus on getting this national park card, or do I want to grab the last red cube on the board to secure that? Those kind of choices that I think they found interesting and sort of a little different than Ticket to Ride.
Cool.
So that is Trekking the World by Underdog Games.
So we were kindly sent a copy of Inkling by Osprey Games, and this is a very simple, very cute little word-based party game where everyone starts the game with a hand of 8 letter cards. Now, but these letters are printed on square cards that can be oriented in any direction, and the letters are kind of designed in a way so that they're made of discrete line segments. This is a little bit hard to picture, but it's kind of important to the concept of the game. So imagine like you have a capital E, but there's a big, bold vertical line, and then the 3 disconnected horizontal lines making it up. So it's kind of a very disjointed, free-flowing E. And the reason that's important is then what you're trying to do is use your sort of collection of cards in order to assemble words based on a little key card you've been given. So every player gets distributed another card that has 6 different words on it. Say furniture, assembly, formation, Peter. There are some names on these cards. Desktop, yeah. And each of those words, depending on its length, has variable number points. So you'll have 3 that are worth 1 point, 2 worth 2 points, and 1 longer one that's worth 3 points. And you're trying to arrange your letters in any way you can think of in order to get the people to your left and right to guess one of those words that's in your secret card. So what I mean by that is you can reorient those cards, you can cover up cards with other cards, flip them over so they're just showing a blank side, have multiple words like intersecting each other crossword style. So if we think back to what I was describing about that E, you might cover up the right-hand side of the E so that all that's showing is the vertical line. So that E now becomes an I. And then you arrange the other letters in interesting ways in order to try to assemble one of these words. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do it exactly, so you might vary the spelling of it or just sort of get halfway there or find some other way to hint towards it. You're allowed to hint towards multiple words if you can, although that's pretty hard. Although, some people were able to do just that in order to get the people to your left and right to guess what words they think you have in your card. So everyone is always playing to the people adjacent to them, and you play this out over the course of 3 rounds without ever changing your key cards. But every round you're going to be able to swap out some letters, get new ones, so you're assembling more and more letters as the game progresses, curating them to the ones you need so that you're able to build either more words or that longer word. And at the end of the game, your score is going to be how many words you've correctly guessed of the players to your left and right, and how many of your words they've correctly guessed. So those scores combined gives you your score for the game. And that's kind of pretty much the long and the short of Inkling. It's a pretty simple game to explain, but it leads to those sorts of moments that I kind of love in this kind of dumb party game, where you do something, you assemble something, and you think you've nailed it. You think it's so clever, and they're totally going to get it. And then Christina walks over and is like, oh yeah, I have this, and then guesses completely the wrong thing. Like gone fishing when I wrote formation, Christina.
Okay, well, at least I could read when you clearly wrote the literal word doctor. I wrote that it was doctor instead of desktop.
Oh, is that what I... No. Let's go back to formation. Neelan spelled out form, A, and then the last word,
to be
shin.
clear, he spelled out form, fishing.
No,
I didn't.
It said fishing. It said fishing at the end.
It was form A and then shin.
Shin.
There was no... We should take in a picture because the
should.
way that you covered up, you like combined 3 cards to make it look like an A, I guess, but it really looked like an F and an I. Well, actually, think about it.
No, don't.
An A could look like an F and an I. Because you made a square A, like with the square top, but I saw it as an F because the F is square at the top, right angle, and then an I, which actually makes sense. So it said fission.
I do see where you're going with this, but what was more funny about the round to me is that I had to endure 5 minutes of Kellen going, formation. I'm like, get there.
I was the one who got there.
That's
you dumbass.
true. You did. Yes, you did better than gone fishing. I will give you that. But yeah, I mean, look, I think that the game is, as we've described it, it is what it says on the tin. It's that sort of very light, dumb, funny party game. It's a sort of a small genre that I sort of like happen to like a lot. I do know that there is perhaps some limited replayability in this type of game. I feel like I will absolutely bring this to my next game night for a game or two, but I think that might see the end of its play in our group. But I enjoyed it, at least. What do you guys think of Inkling?
One thing that I did enjoy is the creativity it sort of allowed players to have when trying to make words out of letters that had nothing to do with the words. Like, the way I sort of handled that situation was, like, if I had the word track and I didn't have the T, but I had the other letters, I would flip over a card so it was blank for the T and have RICK afterwards. But then I noticed that I think Kellen was doing something different where your blank cards were not doing the same thing. We're not like sitting in lieu of another letter. You were having them do something else. I can't remember what it was.
I thought you were going to comment on my creativity when I made a heart out of my cards to get you guys to guess love.
Oh, that's what that was?
Yeah, I can't remember that. But that sort of goes to my point. Like, there were times where I was trying to form a letter out of cards just to get that letter across. And as Christina said, she tried to form a heart out of her card. So, you know, when you're so limited, you have these cards that are letters, but you really need to have one letter and you just don't have it. And you can't even sort of manipulate the way other letters are constructed to get that letter across. You sort of resort to things that, you know, you just sort of have to think outside the box and do whatever you can to get that word.
Yeah, it is interesting too because your thinking outside of the box is not going to be the same as someone else's thinking outside of the box. And so you go into it looking at other people's with your frame of mind, like, okay, well, I know that I approached it like this, and you have no idea what they're trying to get at because your brain is like already in a specific formation. And then like you can't get out of that, and then it takes you, like Kellen, for example, it would literally take him 5 minutes of like saying something out loud until it finally like clicked. And so it allowed for these revelation moments where you kind of were like, oh, that's what, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That aha moment in very small little doses.
One of the things was that Christina, Mark, and myself projected outward towards the table, and Neelan, because he's a selfish person, was spelling towards himself. And so for about 5 minutes, I was looking at his words upside down and trying to come up with what they were, which was not possible. I will say I'm happy that you guys are happy, but like this completely fails the scoring test for me. The in-between round work is dumb. How you can get rid of some cards but not all, then you get more cards and you're spelling the same words that you were already spelling before, and yet you have no idea if people have correctly guessed them, but you have no way to communicate like in code names where you can kind of move on creatively or not. This is a one and done for me. I'd be happy to browse Reddit while you guys are playing this in the future. And again, I do agree that we had some fun moments with it, but like it is truly a one and done for me. I would not want to return.
Because you were bad?
What? No.
Nothing.
I won, if I recall.
Did you win?
I tied for first. I tied
What was the
for
tiebreaker?
first.
It wasn't that you tied for first. You had second solely to yourself.
I had the same amount of points as you, sir.
Okay, but then there's a tiebreaker.
Yeah, that
rule
Neelan
book.
didn't teach us.
That is in the rule.
And so I was making jokes on my scorecard.
That is actually, that is a little fun point that's worth mentioning, is that you have limited guesses. So there is kind of this, you can't just keep writing down everything you think it is. You sort of have to take a chance on some of them.
Efficiency is rewarded.
Yeah.
It should be.
I think being generous, my take is not that far off from Kellen's, but I liked it a lot more. I have a few more plays of this that I'm sure I will enjoy with different groups, but I can't imagine that any of those groups is going to be itching for this in the long term. But I had a lot of fun with it. That is Inkling by Osprey Games. Christina, talk to us about My City.
Okay, so my shocking update for My City is that we played Chapter 2, Games 4, 5, and 6. And it was fun. That's the first thing. We all had a very nice time. There were some new rules that made it more challenging, but also more fun.
It's hard to talk about an ongoing legacy game without getting spoilery, but I think it's fair to say that what was a very loose experience in the first 3 games became a bit more restrictive, became more of a game where you actually had to make some challenging decisions on a turn as to how to proceed with a round. And I thought that was cool. It was starting to feel like a fun game.
I think that my biggest issue at this point is that the game recommends that you play all 3 games of a chapter. So that was 1, 2, and 3. And then this was chapter 2, which had sort of a loose theme centered around restriction. And that's funny because it works thematically too. Ha ha ha. And for me, I think this is like a 2-time through game. By the time we got to the 3rd game, I was like, I get it. I got it. I'm done. Why are we going through this deck again? Again, there's no interaction, so it's the only interaction is hearing people go, I can't place anymore.
I did feel the opposite, though. After the 3rd game, I was kind of like, oh, I wish there was a 4th.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to play another 3, but I wanted there to be more.
And on the most extreme end, I would have done a whole nother chapter of My City, genuinely.
I might have too. I mean, it goes by so fast. It's so innocuous that it's a totally fine game, and a big hook of it is, and I know Kellen takes umbrage with this sort of thing being a hook, and I understand why, I get it, but like, it is the opening the envelope and seeing what's next. Without that, there wouldn't be anything to this, really. I mean, the pros are it moves fast, it's a sort of a well-constructed game, which you would expect from Knizia, and then there's that excitement of like, what's the next envelope going to be? Other than that, there's not really much there, but that is sort of enough. I'm fine
and
with
it's
what
light and pleasant while you're going through each game.
Mark needs to spend more time in Chapter 2 of My City after his recent trip to Vegas.
Good point.
That is our update on My City.
Kellen, tell us about Ruination, please.
Ruination is a new, just delivering from Kickstarter, dudes on a map, people on a plane, meeples on the board game with fantastic art from Roland's Revenge and is designed by Travis Chance. There is a lot of interesting things in Ruination that I hope we can get to, but I want to start up front with, I really want to play this game again. And I want to make that the caveat in the upfront because we had a lot of complicated thoughts about Ruination. Ruination, as you may recall from a previous episode of the podcast, was the game I was most looking forward to playing coming out of quarantine. That has to do a lot with the striking art design. Wow, this is a beautiful game. Wow, it's this post-apocalyptic, Eurasian. It's crazy. It looks beautiful. The board is huge. There's unique art on the cards. The miniatures look great. Really just a great table presence. And you combine that with a system that I think is really, really streamlined. So on your turn, all you're doing is choosing from 3 stacks of cards and then carrying out that card. So there are movement cards, there are recruitment cards, and there are scavenge cards. And so those 3 actions will always be the same, but then the individual cards will have bonuses on them associated with that action. And so if Neelan takes the move card, I will have to choose between the 2 cards he didn't take and then a new move card with different bonuses attached to it. And so, scavenge is sort of scythe-like exploitation of the board. You're collecting resources. Movement is allowing you to spread out on the board. The idea of map presence and adjacency is pretty abstracted. There is not that many territories on the board, and you can pretty much get everywhere you want within 2 movements, but you must cross what's called the wasteland and pay a price to do so. And then the last thing you do is recruit, which is an easy way to get troops onto the board. There are different tracks that you're going up. So there's a favor track, a glory track, and then the victory point track. And those tracks are predominantly associated with one side of the cards. And that, again, sort of speaks to the way the game is laid out. These cards are at the top, boom, 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 3 piles. If you take the scavenge action on the left pile, that mostly corresponds with the favor track, and it corresponds with tech upgrade cards, advancement cards on the left side of the board that you can acquire in tiered Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. And then on the right side of the board, the recruitment action is associated with the glory track, which is also associated with the unique units that you can get, which are called exiles. There is no way we're going to get through all the mechanisms in this game. I want to go through some of the things that I thought were super interesting, and then we can discuss it and talk about some of the things we did not like. One of the things that was really interesting about Ruination is that you could fight pretty much on the first or second turn of the game. There is no real sense of escalating tempo in Ruination. There is attacking. You must attack. You could recruit a couple units and then attack immediately. In addition to that, the normal area control dudes on a map idea is to find the weak point in someone's board and then exploit it. But in this game, you're awarded victory points when you are the attacker based on the amount of units in someone's army. Ergo, you actually want to attack where they have a lot of units, but you think they're going to lose a battle, which is a huge flip in your brain on how to approach battling. The combat system is overlong, but it does feature sort of 3 tiers of information, which is dice, and the dice are represented by how many different types of units you have. So there are little units, bigger units, unique units, and the more unit types you have in an army, the more dice you get to roll, which is interesting because it makes all of the different unit types valuable. There is strength to win the battle, and then there is how many casualties you inflict, which feels like it's cribbed right out of Kemet. Another thing that I find really interesting is that your actions are limited to one of 3. Choose one of these 3 cards, do all the things on it. And that feels really restrictive. And yet, within that card, there is the action that is associated with the movement, the recruitment, the scavenging. There is the track that you get to go up, and then there is also a special power, basically, on each card. And you get to choose the order that you do those 3 things in. And your ability to combo in the game is actually based largely in part in how you do that, because you may go up the track, which allows you to recruit more units, and then you do the bonus, and then you do the main action. And so you're not actually just choosing which of the 3 cards to do, you actually have to plan out in what order you're going to do those actions. In addition to all that, this game in 4-player form in our first game lasted well under 2 hours, which is highly unusual for this genre. It feels in some ways like a greatest hits of a lot of different area control, dudes on a map style games. Very, very unique, very interesting first play. What did you guys think of Ruination?
There was a lot of things that I really, really liked about Ruination. The thing that sort of jumps out to me first and foremost is how little we sort of saw of it. There's a number of unique troops. There's a number of unique powers that you can get in this game, and to me, it felt like we barely scratched the surface. There was a lot of unique special units that were sort of sitting on the side there in case they came up. These like interesting, unique sculpts of these troops that never came up, but just seemed interesting. Like, whoa, I wonder what this guy does. I wonder what she does. And there was just, again, a bunch of powers that people could have purchased that we never got through. We barely skimmed the surface of the power deck. It also handles a lot of things in streamlined, interesting ways. I think even though the combat is dice-based, I think it handles mitigation and streamlining that process in really interesting ways. Kellen mentioned that the number of dice that you roll depends on the number of different types of units. So, you could have 5 of the grunt, the lowest level unit, and that means you just roll 1 die. And I just thought that was interesting, and the way it sort of played itself out in the game felt good. It felt like it was like an interesting yet easy sort of streamlined way. There are some steps to the combat, which does make that take a little bit of time, but I think once we sort of started intuiting how it went, it moved along quicker.
The combat was my least favorite part of it. I think that took so long, and there could be a scenario where Mark attacks both Kellen and Neelan, and I'm not involved in the battle at all, and that whole encounter will take a lot longer than you might expect. And then I'm just sitting, like, there isn't a whole lot of planning out your entire game that goes on, because there's a lot of tactical elements. The 3 options that you have in a turn, the scavenge, move, or recruit, those are pretty limited to what card is on the top of each of those decks. And that was actually my favorite part of the game. I loved every turn going into that being like, oh my gosh, please, Kellen, don't take that card. Don't take that action. I need to take that action. And then either it comes around to my turn and I get to take that action that I wanted, or I don't. And then it's kind of that situation where you have to behave very tactically and pivot and decide, okay, well, I can't do the most optimal thing, but I can do this other card that was just revealed, and that is the second most optimal thing. I just thought it was that system was so streamlined and so fun as a discovery experience as you were revealing these new cards, and the ordering mechanism of deciding, there's the action of the card, there's moving up these different tracks. You have all these smaller decision points that add up to a turn that felt very, very clean and fun to me. I really, really enjoyed that. But getting back to my original thing that I really didn't like was it's not like you're sitting there planning out 10 turns ahead while other people are having this massive encounter. And the battles weren't like so exciting that you wanted to watch every move. And I think, like Kellen said, it also had to do with this tempo problem, which was that we weren't building up every single battle, wasn't building to this bigger and bigger thing. And so when that happens in games, you do care about every single battle, and it kind of got to the point where you're not necessarily as invested. And I do think that some of that would change, of course, in subsequent plays, and I am very excited to play more games of this. But I do hope that tempo issue changes. I'm not sure if it will. It does seem like Kellen brought up, that's part of the game, is that you can immediately start attacking, which is cool, but it's also like you're not really building to something. So my overall experience was super positive. I really liked a lot of, every turn was so satisfying. But again, I would really need more plays to understand if I could overcome those tempo issues that I felt.
Yeah, I think for me, Christina, you hit on two things I agree with absolutely. I think the combat system is by design a little bit more interesting than both sides throw dice, read the results, etc. There's a little bit of back and forth, I will do this, you do that. It reminds me of that way. It's not nearly as complex as something like Forbidden Stars battle system, but it has a little bit more back and forth to it.
The 30-minute battle system is the comparison
but the thing is, it does, by getting closer to that, it has that similar problem where if you're not involved, watching two people have that back and forth is not that exciting necessarily to watch when you're not a big part of it. And especially because of what you described about the fragility of your armies. It feels like things all just disappear, and then you get them all back with a big recruit, and then you move them out, then they disappear. There's a constant turnover to it, which I think feels kind of refreshing and kind of invigorating in how fast it turns over. But it does feel like you're never building an army or mounting a big campaign across the map. Everything just feels a little bit more ephemeral.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's a good point. It doesn't feel devastating when all of your troops are killed.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's just it's so easy to recruit everything again. And that could, again, I think on subsequent plays, that could be really fun.
And that's why the inability to do that doesn't bother me, because I think in games where you can amass a big army and you are making big pushes, if you lose, it can be devastating. It can really hinder you for the rest of the game. I think board game design with troops on map games has sort of moved away from that into this more quick battles, replenish, losses aren't devastating. You'll get something for winning and you'll be hurt from losing, but it won't be a game crushing thing. So I actually appreciate that quite a bit in this game.
I think that's funny because I also appreciate that. But I kind of love when it's devastating.
Sure.
There's so much at stake. You care so much. And because you care so much, you really have to fight all the harder to win,
I think a good reference point, right, is when we talk about Cthulhu Wars as risk adjacent, you grow up playing that sort of plotting, expand out your territory, and you're standing up at the edge of your seat because you can't lose that one battle where it must matter. And this has almost none of that. It kind of feels like Kemet in the fact that the board is the board, but it almost doesn't need to exist in some small way. The way that I want to describe this, and we've already talked about some negatives, but I thought we were going to get to sort of our shut up and sit down mid-review turnaround. It feels like a popcorn game experience that you can't take nearly as seriously as any of the reference points that we're giving, like Cthulhu Wars, Inish, Kemet, all of the greats, Blood Rage, Rising Sun, all feel like they have substantially, at this point, substantially more strategy to them or more ability to pre-plan what you're doing and affect what's happening in the game. I cared less about winning Ruination because when it got to my turn, all the cards had changed, and I was like, well, which of these three things is going to help me tactically? And it was fun to find the combos, but it wasn't, the stakes weren't that high because I didn't care as much because everything felt just a little bit too popcorny for me.
And that's why I feel like even though I'm excited to play this game again, I know that I'll never love it, because I think your point is well made, but if you're asking me to play a troops on the map game where I'm naturally going to be more invested in those type of games and naturally going to be more invested in winning those type of games because they are head-to-head against my friends, so I really want to win those games, and then you're telling me that the best way to enjoy that is to understand that the game may not reward the best player sort of thing or the best played game because of the luck factor, that's sort of an instant turnoff, and I don't think there's really... I think this game will show us a lot of things upon further plays, but that the luck factor when it comes to the cards that come up and the fact that you can't plan, I don't really see that being something that changes from game to game, and that's something that as we were playing it, I just thought like, oh, there's a lot of interesting things here, and I wonder how it would play out in further plays, but the randomization of the bonuses you get for doing the actions seemed like a hurdle that I wouldn't be able to get over.
And it's actually like pretty pointed for me, right? Because like I think that the game invites a lot of comparisons to Kemet, but that all of the changes that it makes from Kemet are in the service of popcorning it a little bit. And, you know, when Kemet's a game that I like a whole lot, I mean, it's a game that's on my top 50, and you're saying, okay, you have all of these powers, but some of them might not be there at the start. They might be buried in the deck. Or you have these abilities, but who knows where they are going to show up in this action deck, or which of these 3 exiles are going to be out. And there's some dice to the combat, which is not a thing I dislike generally. But again, we're layering on changes to Kemet that I think make it worse. And that's kind of a hard pull for me to swallow personally.
I think it's significantly shorter. It feels like a game I'd be happy to play at a convention. But I think it feels especially pronounced when you get to sort of the last round or the last 2 rounds of the game. And my hope, my desperate hope when I play this again is that, no, Kellen, it's a tactical game. Ride the tactics. You know, you love games like Innovation, and you just have to be okay with that. But when you get to like the last 2 turns and you're really trying to get these bastions for end-of-game scoring, and then the movement that comes up just doesn't help you at all, and the last 3 movements would have given you a ton of things, you just get got and could lose, 8, 9, 10 points, enough to literally lose the game on the last turn just by structure of those 3 cards that are available to you. I love the concept of you choose one of these 3 things, get moving, and I think it sits in stark contrast to many of the games that I dislike, which just say, here's 1,700 actions you can do, a feast for Odin, eat your heart out. But I'm scared that this will be a game that, like Mike DeLisio, the Fandango tank, will just gobble up his popcorn, love this, but that it won't be one for us at the end of the day to replace any of the sort of greats, the Inishes, the Cthulhu Wars, the Komets, the games that we really, the Blood Rages that we really, really love. And that was Ruination or Ruination. Ruination. There's a lot of ways you could say it.
And only one of them right.
Who could say what the right way to say it is? But excited and eager to get to this table again. And man, the artwork. I really, really love the artwork.
So let's, without further ado, get into our feature for this week, which is going to be a quick double billing of some questions from Patreons. So the first question we got emailed in.
Wait, before you read the question, do the mailbag opening sound effect.
Oh God, no! I don't know if I can.
Is this Blue's Clues?
What?
That's it.
Dentist?
No,
That's it.
You gotta open the mailbag. It's like zip. You open the
Why
mailbag.
is mailbag of a zip? Mailbags of drawstrings.
Well, not for sound effects purposes. Zip. Perfect. Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
This question that was just emailed into us is as follows. Your discussion of black licorice on the patron bonus episode got me thinking about black licorice board games. What are some games that fit the bill for you? I think we're probably going to have to unpack this a little bit. If I remember correctly, what the discussion on the bonus episode was like this idea that black licorice is like a weird thing, like this combination of like salty and sweet, and how that's like a weird combination. So that in my head is, I think, what this question is asking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we were talking about black licorice. Christina, I forget. Were you on that?
I was not there. Yeah,
What is your
so I have no
position
idea
on,
what you guys are talking
on
about.
black licorice in general?
What is my position? Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure. I think I'd have to try it again. This is one of those things that as a kid I just decided I didn't like and then never tried again.
Okay,
I think I
that's-
might like it now.
No,
though.
I think you're right. Your instinct is correct. 'Cause black licorice is terrible. But
Well,
I
the
think
thing is, though, I like all the things that I hated that I thought I didn't like. Now I like. So that my position is that I probably like
Oh,
it.
I could have brought black licorice to our games. We could have all.
God.
Oh,
You ordered it?
No, I still got some bags. Not the stuff you like, but like the honey black licorice I already
what's
had.
the stuff that Kellen
Kellen
likes?
likes like the ones that are like covered in like actual like salt granules, like
Crystal
crystals,
salt.
Yeah.
Wait, there's
Delicious.
really salt on the
Yep,
black licorice.
yep.
All right. So there's a lot of ways to unpack this, right? And first of all, we can't insult the person who submitted this because they give us money. I mean, it's like niche. It's like niche games, right? It's like games that are unpalatable to the many, but the few really stand by them. And then if you combine that with salt, then it's games that are like weird combination of flavors, but somehow it still tastes good, again, to that niche audience. So, boom, we're talking about games like
Archipelago.
Archipelago is a classic example. Thank you, Christina. Archipelago is a very heavy Euro game, right? That is on all of our top 50 lists, but it has the possibility of a hidden traitor. And that is so unpalatable, like black licorice, unpalatable, that many Euro players try to play the game without that component. They say, well, you know, I want to play the Euro part, but I don't want that part in my black licorice or in my mouth, I guess, to extend the metaphor.
I'll take the black licorice plus salt analogy where it's two different things sort of combining. For my example, the first thing that pops into my head when I think of these kind of games is Safranito, which is a set collection recipe fulfillment game, but where the way that you get the resources is through a dexterity aspect where you're throwing discs onto a board, trying to gather resources. That always struck me as a game that sort of like combined two weird things in a really unique and good way. I really am a big fan of Safranito.
Mark, I thought you were just going to say your example was playing board games with prostitutes.
No, that's not two weird things. They go together
Yeah.
naturally.
That's like chocolate sauce and vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, that's right.
So I actually think this is a great one for the people in the Discord, for the people on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere. Like, it's like, what is that flavor of game? What is that game that, like, you alone love? Or that feels like an unusual combination of mechanisms that is unpalatable to the many, but you really enjoy it? I think, honestly, I'd love to get more examples
Yeah?
of this.
Yeah.
I can't, they're not coming fresh off the top of my head. I think there's a lot that could fit into this category. You know, I think about like Millennium Blades is a weird one where you're playing sort of a deck building game, but then you're doing it in real time. Then you're running a tournament with those cards. And so when you combine that all together, it's a game that I don't know who it's really for, but for the person who loves that flavor, they just love it. They go crazy for Millennium Blades. I think a lot of people may have this as one of their favorite games ever. And yet, to the many, I don't think it's something, it's like a very niche board game product.
You know what else is niche and not for everyone, Mark?
What's that? Prostitutes?
Well, obviously. Yes. Well, I was thinking of True Colors, which we have just a splendid time playing, but a lot of people are just like, nope, we'll never, ever, ever play that ever again, or ever, period. I don't know if that's black licorice enough, but it feels right.
It makes sense for black
Yeah.
licorice because I never, ever, ever will never, ever have black licorice again. So I think it works in that respect.
But you will ever, 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 forever play True Colors.
That's correct. That's correct.
In the vein of like stuff like Archipelago, I think that there's a lot of room you can get from like Euro plus some weird mechanical or some like un-Euro system laid on top of it. Like I think about something like a Sidereal Confluence and how like that is a extremely Euro cube conversion game where you take cubes, you get them in, you stare down at your boards, you see how you convert them to other cubes, but the entire game is fueled on this like heavy interaction. Like you can't get anything done in Sidereal Confluence unless you're running around the table to anyone that will be able to give you cubes and get them from them however you can. So it's the opposite of like a everyone's heads down staring at their player board game because of this injected negotiation. I think like stuff like Genoa kind of also fits that bill a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of where my head went when I was thinking about this beforehand, of like this weird mixes that don't seem right until like one game mixes them well together. Let's move on to our second question. This next question weirdly was addressed specifically to Kellen. I don't know what to make of that. but it says, I've been thinking about how a lot of people have summer movies that they return to year over year. Do you have any favorite light summer board games? So, Kellen, the expert on summer, apparently, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. Thank you, loyal listener, first of all. Well, okay, so this is actually kind of interesting because for me, lighter games, like Mark was describing Trekking the World, and I don't know that those lighter games really work for me. There are games like Tokaido, which I think is historically seen as like, it's so easy breezy. You just go to the next spot on the board and everyone has a fun time, and then Mark wins 20 points to 17 points to 16 points. I think for me, the games that sort of typify this are games like Splendor. And Splendor is one that we talk about a lot. But really, I think this for me has become something the closest akin to like people who play cribbage, either on their phones with grandpas or in person with their family that they played for many years. Like if we're just busting something out to do, it would be something like Splendor. I have multiple ongoing games of Splendor on Board Game Arena, and I'm always just excited to log on and take a turn. It's like that dumb, but I can take a turn whenever I log onto the computer, and it's a small little moment of pleasantry. With that said, Splendor is like a race game that has some competition where you take something that someone else wants, so it isn't historically like what you would describe as like the light, breezy, everyone wins game, but for me, that layer of competition makes it worth playing, I guess, if that makes sense.
Speaking of a race game, I was thinking of Quest for El Dorado.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
When I heard summer, I immediately thought of this because I feel like Neelan and I talked about this before, but like this feels like a summer vacation. Like it feels so like light and exciting and like this journey that you're going on, and it's so delightful and fun. I feel like that would be a perfect example for me, and can't go wrong with the Doctor. As always.
It's like slipping into like a light, comfortable shorts and t-shirts vibe. It's just very pleasant. Like I like that game a lot because every time I play it, it just feels like it feels chill. It feels easy.
Or slipping out of a t-shirt and shorts. For me, when I thought of summertime or summer breezy sort of games, I thought more about games with a small footprint for some reason. Games that I can sort of like crack open, don't have a lot of pieces. Yeah, carry in your pocket, or, don't have a lot of pieces. You don't have to set out a board. And that I sort of feel like so comfortable with that I can just play without thinking because I sort of know the game. Splendor came to mind immediately in that, although there are some pieces with Splendor, it still is fairly small in terms of footprint. But for me, what's become my like summertime game just this year is Race for the Galaxy. Race for the Galaxy is a game that I just like feel so comfortable with. I can play a game in like 10 minutes or less, and I'm just super comfortable with it. Goes really fast, but every sort of new turn feels exciting. It's like what Kellen was saying, like I get a new turn of Splendor, and he has a bunch of games going, and every turn is like a little shot of happiness or excitement. I feel the same with the Race for the Galaxy. Like I just boom, 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 boom. The game moves so fast, but you can really get these weird combos where you're really trying to go hard in one aspect or one type of planner or one type of scoring. I just love the speed of it and the quickness and the familiarity. Just all amounts to a good combo.
Sort of feels like when everyone else is on vacation and the one kid says, I want to go do homework over summer break.
What, Race for the Galaxy's homework?
Race for the Galaxy up here? This is
So
light and
good.
breezy. Are you kidding me?
It's so quick. It's like, it's 10 minutes.
Think about this, Mark. Okay, we're the experts. Remember, the world's premier #1 Los Angeles, Santa Monica board game experts. Santa Monica, dude.
That is
an easy breezy game about being in Santa Monica on the
that
beach.
is actually.
And you want to play Race for the Galaxy up in here, you nerd?
That's actually like almost a perfect fit is Santa Monica, yeah.
That is a good one, but a recent addition to this, I was just thinking about, would be Mountain Goats.
Yeah. Yeah,
Which
good.
Kellen talked about last week on the podcast, and we all got to play with him yesterday. And yeah, it was so, again, it was so delightful and so light and easy breezy. And we were laughing the whole time. And I mean, we were like laugh crying the whole time. It's and it could fit in your pocket too, maybe.
I mean, I agree, but honestly, the thing that makes it feel less summery and less easy breezy is like the size of the cards. It's a game that you can fit in your pocket, but the table presence is enormous. You need like a...
Compared to Race for the Galaxy?
Like 7,000 cards. What are you talking about?
Race for the Galaxy? It's not a big table presence.
Like the tableau ends up being pretty big, doesn't it? I mean, I guess not that big.
It's like 12 cards at the end of the game, like regular sized cards, not double sized.
Yeah,
weird
there's no
square
teacher to
cards.
suck up to right now, Mark. Easy breezy summer games. Race for the galaxy.
One quick example actually did have some almost immediate relevance, like this weekend even, is I was at a picnic with friends, and I didn't have it with me, but the question was asked, did you bring the Resistance? And I thought like that type of like game that you can easily play outdoors while you're just sitting on a lawn, or like a one-night ultimate werewolf, I think that fits this bill pretty well, or werewords perhaps. Yeah.
Dear preeminent board game expert, did you bring your favorite board game, A Feast for Odin, to this picnic so we could have a light summer breezy
Yep,
day?
that's what I should have said. Nope, brought that instead. Resistance is so last summer.
Okay, wait, last thing. I know we're running out of time, but I feel like we can't skip through summer without mentioning Fuji Flush.
Yeah.
Because I think that's like our Barrage Con. Well, I guess Barrage Con has happened in the fall, but it feels like it's summer. We go up to the mountains. It's still sunny and nice. And yeah, Fuji Flush. We play Fuji Flush in the mountains.
Speaking of Barrage Con, I was promised a Barrage Con as soon as we were
There's no
vaccinated.
continuity here. Nerd.
I think that's going to be all the questions we answer this week in the interest of time, but please keep sending your questions in. We love to do these every so often where we just take questions from our listeners. So please email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com or reach out on our social media, on our Facebook group. That's at boardgamebarrage.com/Facebook, or on Twitter at BRDGameBarrage. And as always, come join and hang out with us in our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, where you can make suggestions for the podcast or ask questions that you'd like to hear answered. And I think that is going to do it for this week's episode of the show. So thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro music, What's on Your Mind, Kid? Goodbye.
I'm going to zip up the mailbag.
We can't have you zipping up your pants on us this show. There's children
This isn't
listening.
Vegas.
Oh, boy. Okay,
Bye.
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 I'm hot. I'm ready. I want you to save me from myself.
And the boom, boom, boom.
For the triple boom, I sat down with some friends, a wholesome family of friends, whom I had taught Ticket to Ride about a year and a half ago.
Ticket to Ride, very appropriate considering.
God, I'm never going to get to this. I'm never going to get this. Okay. Whom I taught Ticket to Ride a year or so ago. Jesus Christ, why is this so funny? I don't get it. Okay. We good? We focused on the task at hand?
I think we've got the outtakes handled. at
Oh,
this
I know.
point.
I'm thankful for that. I don't have to search for them. They're all in one spot right in the beginning. Okay.
You made a funny face. You went...
Okay. Can you blame me? Okay. Friends I had taught Ticket to Ride to about a year and a half ago